Okay, hello. My name is Doug Ribley. It's really a pleasure to be here to present and be part of the faculty for the Medical Fitness Institute. Um, I am going to be presenting. My topic is recruit, train, retain, and evaluate staff. Such an important topic. So before we get into that, I'd like to just share some intro information. So my name is Doug Ribley. I am currently Senior Vice President of Health and Wellness Services for Cleveland Clinic Akron General. I've been in that role for 25 years, and I have been in the development and administrative oversight of hospital-based or affiliated health and wellness centers for my entire career, which has been 35 years. So again, this is what I've done my entire career. It's certainly been a passion and extremely rewarding. As it relates to Cleveland Clinic Akron General and our health and wellness program, we started our facilities back in the first center opened in November of 1996. It was a 200,000 square foot health and wellness outpatient delivery model. Still exists today and still thriving today, although it certainly is a very unique environment. But we had such success with that center that had an opportunity to develop a second center on the other side of town, and that center opened in 2007. And then we opened a third center in 2012. So at Cleveland Clinic Akron General actually owns and operates three world-class health and wellness centers. Those health and wellness centers are a comprehensive outpatient model with a full outpatient continuum of care. So in those buildings, we diagnose disease, illness, and injury. We treat disease, illness, and injury through one of three ways: freestanding emergency department, urgent care services, and or outpatient surgery. So we diagnose, we treat, we rehabilitate. So there's a full range of clinical rehab services, which include physical therapy, sports medicine, sports performance, cardiopulmonary rehab phase 2 and phase 3, occupational therapy, neuro, and speech. So diagnose, treat, rehabilitate, and then last but not least is prevent. So the wellness services portion of the building includes a medical fitness center, which we call Lifestyles, but we also, out of these locations, this is our home base for our community health initiatives as well. So we have health screening nurses and registered dietitians, and we provide screening and health education and nutritional services to the community, to corporations, and to universities as well through that division. So through the Lifestyles medical fitness component at these three locations, we have 16,000 members. We're at capacity at our flagship location. And again, we continue to work hard at innovating, especially again in this current time. So with that, I'd like to move on and talk a little bit about the agenda. So the things that I'd like to cover today include staffing metrics, recruiting, training, retaining, evaluation, high-performing teams, and then we'll cover some additional considerations. And again, I think there's no question that when we talk about medical fitness and what we do throughout a community and for our constituents, that this is a people business, and first and foremost. And the most successful centers, when you look at the most successful programs across the country, there is a direct correlation between that and the competence and expertise and success of the staff that are leading those programs. And so this is a real relevant topic. It's also important from a business perspective because it does represent, other than occupancy costs, it does represent the largest expenditure of this business model as well. So we'll be looking at it from a number of different perspectives as we go through this presentation. I did want to comment. I think I would be remiss if I didn't at least comment or make a couple comments on COVID-19 and the impact on staffing and the medical fitness business model. And so real quickly, because several of the topics that we touch on today, are changing. And they're changing rapidly, and so it's important to kind of just set the table around the impact of COVID-19. So this presentation isn't about that, but I did want to touch on a couple of things. First and foremost, for those of you who are in this business, which I'm assuming is everyone on listening to this presentation, as we talk to centers that are in regions across the country that have opened, and we look at projections for the rest of 2020, what most organizations are predicting or reforecasting is about a 25 to 30% reduction in business performance. So volumes, revenue, etc. And that seems to be playing out pretty accurately. We are all experienced, for those who have opened, closed, and reopened, everyone that I'm communicating with are experiencing a gradual rebound. So each week we're stronger than the week before, which is a really good sign. Many experts believe that until there's a vaccine or a treatment, that this will be the trend. It'll be a gradual rebound as people gain confidence in the great work that you're all doing within your centers. Once a vaccine or a treatment is developed and released, all experts are predicting that we will then see a rapid rebound. So it will accelerate quickly because, quite frankly, people want to be in our centers. They recognize that they need to be using physical activity, nutrition, and health education to manage or prevent chronic conditions. Our environments are outstanding at helping people achieve those kinds of objectives, and so folks want to get back into this environment. So we will see a rapid rebound. There have also been a number of learnings throughout this process that I think have changed our industry for forever. One is that most centers have adopted some type of or expanded a virtual platform. And I believe going forward that members of our facilities and participants in our programs are going to they will expect that that's part or a component of what they're part of, and that's something that will truly add value to the overall offering. So that virtual process, that virtual programming is here to stay and will continue to evolve. I will also say that right now in our business, we talk a lot about the medical fitness business model, and I'll be talking about the medical fitness difference. But right now, there is nothing that we all can be doing that would be more important than one thing, and that's doing everything we possibly can to make sure that we keep people safe within our centers. That's really a competitive advantage, being part of a healthcare organization or being affiliated with a healthcare organization and adopting a medical fitness model. We have a unique advantage in that we have the ability to truly adopt policies, practices that can keep people safe, and that's really what we need to be focused on during this time. So those were a few comments I want to mention and leading into this presentation. As we go, I'll move on to my first slide, which talks about the medical fitness difference. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but as you look at the slide, you'll see I talk about the elevator speaking points. It's important that we understand who we are and who we're not. And so when you go through when you look at the medical fitness difference, there's really four key things, three, which leads into a fourth. So first is medical supervision or medical oversight. And so people that are part of our programs can be assured that there is medical oversight related to every decision that's made, whether it's purchasing a new treadmill or introducing a new exercise, a chronic disease risk reduction exercise program. So this is a crucial differentiator, is the fact that these centers have medical supervision and oversight. Next is qualified staff. So when people come to our centers, they have an expectation, and that expectation is that the people that they're talking to have the appropriate credentials and qualifications to adequately and safely address their health-related questions and concerns. That's an obligation for a medical fitness center, and we need to make sure that we meet this expectation. People expect when they're at a healthcare affiliated center or a center that has adopted a medical fitness model, that the people there are qualified to be doing what they're doing, and that is truly a differentiator. Next is clinical integration. So when we talk about clinical integration, this could be physical plant, the merging of various outpatient clinical services with retail-oriented health and wellness services, or it could be the merging of multidisciplinary approaches to bringing together staffs with different credentials to come together to create unique program models that can produce meaningful outcomes related to chronic disease, either its management or prevention. So clinical integration is truly an important differentiator in this model. And then I do want to then add that when you look at those three things, the byproduct of those three things is that a medical fitness center is and needs to be the safest option available to folks who are trying to manage or prevent chronic conditions through regular participation in medically supervised physical activity, nutrition, or health education. That is crucial. There are some other things here. Measured quality, outcome focus. So our centers are really about making a difference in people's lives. Ongoing performance improvement initiatives. We're always working, just like any other department in a healthcare organization, we're constantly working to improve performance. Cleanliness and maintenance is of the utmost importance. Customer service, again, is something that really goes without saying. We have to exceed member, patient, community expectations at all times through their experiences as they engage with our products and services. And an individual approach. This is not a cookie cutter approach. We evaluate folks. We use that information to guide the exercise prescriptions that we prescribe, and help lead people through as they work to achieve their personal health-related goals and objectives. So, in getting started, when I look at a medical fitness center, I usually divide it into two areas. I call it the hardware and the software. So the hardware is the physical plant. It's everything that the box. It's everything that is related to the physical plant and the FF&E, or the fixtures, furnishings, and equipment that go with that. And then you combine that with the software, the software is everything that goes on within that box and external to that box, which is programmatic in nature and really is what produces the outcomes. And so when I look at centers that are either meeting or not meeting expectation, usually it's one of two things when we talk about that. And one is with the hardware. Many times, or in cases where a center is not meeting expectations, if the center is not built, the physical plan is not built and aligned with the market that's there to support it, you can have the best team, the best staff, the best programs in that center because of the significant impact and cost of the overhead related to the physical plant will never be self-sustaining. And if a center is not self-sustaining, it's going to be very difficult for that center, for you to be able to meet the mission of improving the health of the community served for many years to come. And if you want to ensure your long-term viability of the great work that you and your teams do within your marketplaces, you want to make sure that you are self-sustaining, regardless of whether someone tells you should be or should not at an executive level within the organization, because those people turn over. So that's important. Centers need to be sized and appropriately sized and equipped so that they are aligned with the market that's there to serve them. If there's a disconnect there, it will be very difficult for that center to meet or exceed expectations. And then as we look at the software, the programmatic services within, same type of approach. That needs to be aligned with the needs and the desires of the folks that center is designed to serve. So so these are important points that we need to keep in mind. But through that software, since it's such an important component of the overall center, what really drives the software, and again, I'm using that term loosely, but what really drives the success in that component of a medical fitness center is the staff, is great staff innovating around great programs, and then deploying those programs so that they ultimately produce a meaningful outcome. And that's all what happens on that side of the equation. And so we need to make sure that we're aligning that program and those efforts with the market, and that is led by staff. And so the decisions we make as business operators in terms of bringing people on board or training people or developing teams, that is crucial to the ultimate business success as well as the outcomes that will be produced from this model. So critically important. The key to success then is people. We have to have great people, and there's lots of ways to get there. It's interesting, but if we're going to take the time to recruit, manage, train, develop great teams and great people, we have to be willing as leaders to bring in the best people or develop the best people, and then give them the ability to use their God-given skills and talents to make a positive impact on the community that they serve. And so it's really interesting. You can walk into centers. I get an opportunity to visit many, and within a couple of minutes of walking into a center, you can very quickly determine and pick up on the leadership and the culture around that organization. So organizations that have a culture of empowerment, and they're setting goals for folks, and they're defined goals, but they're not micromanaging the process. They're allowing great people to do great things with their talents to impact their members and community. Those folks are empowered. Those folks come across very differently. They're very motivated. They're very high energy folks, and very passionate about what they're doing, and the fact that they're in a culture that has an empowered environment allows them to function in that capacity. And in the end, that produces that encourages and supports great people and great performance, which produces great experiences, great outcomes, and in the end, successful businesses. So that's that culture, that cultural decision, and that cultural approach to managing and leading teams is critically important, versus a micromanaged environment where not only are goals determined, but the process, every step of the process to get there is micromanaged as well. And so in that kind of case, you can have great people, but we're not utilizing their skills and talents. We're basically giving them almost a template that they have to follow to get to a desired outcome. That produces another type of that is a different type of culture. And typically what you find is you find higher turnover in those situations, and you find people that basically have almost given up on trying to provide input, and they basically are just following direction, and it shows. And it shows in the outcomes related to that business as well. So just an important point to touch on. The next thing I wanted to mention was about a career ladder in the process to be great in our industry. It's interesting, but I get an opportunity to talk to a lot of folks, and also a lot of young people who are looking for careers in this business. And there's a lot of great young talent that's out there, but you also come across young talent that are great, but maybe a little bit misguided. And they come out of school, and the conversation might be something like, I've got my degree, so when you hire me, who am I going to manage, and how much are you going to pay me? And not bad questions, but someone who comes into this profession with that kind of approach, I would say a majority, generally speaking, is not coming in with the right mindset and the right and clearly the right expectations, and probably won't go very far. The process in this industry and the career is a career ladder. And basically, what people need to understand is when they come into this business, they're going to come in at a certain rung on that ladder. It doesn't matter what it is. But when you're at that rung, you have to do everything in your power to be the very, very best you can be, so that when the next rung, when the next opportunity becomes available, or the next rung on the ladder becomes available, you can't be ignored. And then you get moved to that rung of the ladder. And then at that rung, you need to be the absolute best that you can possibly be at that rung of the ladder. And then you move to the next. And so over time, and this takes a period of time, you move up this ladder. And during that time, you're gaining experience in what I call a foundational, you're gaining foundational expertise around our business, that makes you invaluable in the future to an employer. And so it's really important that you go through that process. And leaders that skip that process, or for some reason they get put in a leadership role without going through that process, they lack that foundation. They, generally speaking, are not the best leaders. So this is a process that it's important to go through. And the thing about this is this process takes some time. And not everyone's willing. What I found over the years is not everyone is willing to take that time. But I will guarantee anyone, if you go through this process and you're willing to invest the time in the process, I guarantee the money and the responsibility will ultimately catch up and surpass your current level. So uh, this is really an important lesson that I think people need to know when they get into this business. It's not a quick process. We are. The other thing about degrees and credentials are critically important, as we've talked about. But I will tell you that just because someone has the degree and the credential doesn't mean that they ultimately are ready for a leadership role. And so that degree or credential, what that often does is get people through the door and get them their first opportunity. After you have your first opportunity, everything from there is the value that you bring to the organization that you're part of. And that's what gets you your success and your growth, and gets you to compensation levels and responsibility levels that are your ultimate goal as a professional in this industry. So I want to take a minute and just talk about that, because that does come up, and it's important that we set realistic expectations and almost a guide for what it takes to be successful within this industry. So let's talk about staffing metrics real quick. And I'm not going to take a whole lot of time on this, but I did want to point out that you'll notice on the slide that I have the columns at the top. So these are benchmark stats. This is data or statistics that we can very quickly, when we can gather this information, we can very quickly understand how a medical fitness business is performing, where the strengths are, where the weaknesses are, and where the opportunities for improvement are. And so there are a few here that are directly related to staff, and so I wanted to touch on those. But generally, this is a lot of good information that those in the business or have been in the business for a while, you're very familiar with this. And those that are new, if you're not familiar with this, you should become familiar with this. The one thing I will stress is that the columns at the top, one of the things that we often see, published in, in online communications and newsletters and so forth is, the benchmarks or average performance for these metrics. And I don't know about you, but in my 35-year career, I've never once sat down and talked about or been satisfied with being average at anything. Just who I am. I mean, if I got to spend 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours at a place, I might as well do something very productive with that time and make a difference. And that's the kind of people that I work hard to surround myself with within my organizations that I'm involved with. So there are these average metrics, performance metrics. The point that I want to make about these averages aren't necessarily good. And in fact, some of these metrics, if your business is performing and meeting these metrics, they actually mean that your business may be losing money. So I don't think that that's where we want to be. And I think we maybe put too much emphasis on some of those statistics that are published. But more than that, what I like to do, so if we move to the column all the way on the left, or the first column, I like to collect this data from the top 10% of the best performing hospital affiliated centers in the country. So I believe that I'm very blessed to have a very strong network, being in the industry as long as I have, and I regularly collect this information. And from my perspective, this is the meaningful information. This is what we should be striving to achieve as organizations. So I would just put that out there. I also mentioned that the Southeast region has for years, under the leadership of Neil Bird, put together some really meaningful, really consistent and ongoing and meaningful data, and metric data. And certainly, I think there's about 25 or 30 centers that regularly contribute, and I find it to be extremely helpful to look at that as well. So with that, moving on, there are just a couple of things I want to point out. Probably when I have an opportunity and I'm asked to go in and help centers around the country, and when I do that, we start to do an evaluation to get to really learn more about the business. On the cost side of the equation, being that employee costs is one of the largest, if not the second largest cost of this business. Is one of the metrics that's most meaningful is employee cost to revenue, that ratio. And it's really, every time I talk to a different organization, sometimes they're always looking at it a little bit differently. This is every dime that your organization spends on your people. So this means your wages. This means every aspect of the benefits. This also means, for those of you that are using independent contractors to provide some services, the cost of your independent contractors. It should be all employee-related costs that are related to your business. Whatever that total spend is, what percentage of that, what is that percentage of your total revenue for the same period of time? So really, when you look at the best performing centers across the country right now, certainly this has creeped, there's been some creep to this number over the years, but the best performing centers tend to be falling somewhere in the 40 to 45% of revenue range for employee costs. So I throw that out there. This definitely gets a little bit more challenging for smaller centers with smaller revenue streams, because there is this par level of staffing in our business. So whether you have 5 members or 1,000 members, there's still some positions that need to be filled regardless. And so it gets a little bit tougher as your business and your revenue stream is smaller. But the best performing centers are running around 40 to 45% of revenue. The Southeast region, the last time I pulled this data, was running around 55%. The average center performance around 52%. So again, this varies year to year. But from my perspective, and with the folks that I work with, anything over 50%, any employee costs over 50% is unacceptable, and usually is an indication, that the center is not meeting expectation. So I wanted to just kind of point that out. Next is members per FTE. So this is an interesting metric only because uh, you obviously want a high number of members per FTE. You want to have that impact, but this is a double-edged sword. If you have too many members per FTE, you're probably not effective, and if you have too few, then your costs are probably out of line. So again, there's kind of this sweet spot, and the numbers here kind of represent the sweet spot for centers that are of a square footage or a revenue level that's posted above. So I just wanted to share that, so that's something that you could refer to. As in terms of total FTEs, that's really a tough one because every market is different. Every business has its intricacies, and so it's really tough. There are some metrics around this, FTEs per square foot and so forth. And I think, as pointed out here in the middle column, the Southeast region, their average was somewhere around 21 FTEs for their centers, and I would say that's pretty accurate based on the centers that I work with or follow. So, but again, that's totally, you could have a center that ranges from 5,000 square feet up to 60,000 square feet. So that's going to be very different. And you can have centers that serve 700 membership accounts all the way up to 16,000 membership accounts or more. So that all is going to be influenced. But you will want to follow. The bottom line is I think the most meaningful number is your employee-related costs, the percentage of your employee-related costs to your revenue. That seems to be most helpful for me. And then FTEs per square foot, and so you can see that number there as well. So I thought I'd just throw that out there so that it might be helpful as you try to evaluate. I mean, one of the questions that I get often is my organization staffed correctly? Are our costs correct? And it's a good question because this again is where we have to be, especially in today's day and age, we have to be looking for all opportunities to be as efficient as possible while still being able to deliver the kind of value and meet the expectations of our community and members. So this is something that I'm sure you're all looking at on a regular basis. And we're all being forced to kind of re-engineer our staffing model so that we can be as efficient as possible while being as effective as possible. So again, this is something that you need to really be in tune with in terms of metrics that directly impact your business. So let's talk. Let's touch on a couple of other topics. Recruiting great people. So we've already, I hope I've made the case for the importance of having a great team, great people that are really passionate and highly energized. That's really important in this relationship business that we're in. And I talked about, I already covered the medical fitness difference and the importance of qualified staff. Great people are motivated by the opportunity to make a difference. That's the kind of people that we want in our organizations. We're not looking for someone that's looking for an opportunity to, to collect a check which is fine, but we're really looking for people that it goes beyond the money, that they're really in this business because they really want to be in a position to do meaningful work. And if you talk about meaningful work, I mean, if I'm spending as much time as I've spent over the last 35 years in this industry, and it has to be something that I'm passionate about, and I personally feel kind of I'm motivated by the fact that I'm in a unique position to positively impact people's lives. And for me, that's important. That makes my life and my passion meaningful. And those are the kind of people that we want to try to identify and have those folks be part of our organizations. And it's tricky because people know what to say in an interview. So you can go through all the right steps and make a good decision, and occasionally it doesn't work out the way you had hoped. We've all been there. But you do the best you can to try to find like-minded folks that are qualified, passionate, and really motivated to be there to do good and to make a difference within your for the folks that your organization serves. So the next topic, which we've all been in these conversations, do you hire personality or credential? So again, we're a medical fitness center, so credentials are important, right? However, I'm of the mindset that being a people person is really, at least in my experience, it's not impossible, but very difficult to teach or train someone to have a certain type of personality, or be an introvert or an extrovert or whatever it is that you're reaching for. So in my opinion, that people person, that inner comfort around people, that ability to be comfortable and outgoing and high energy, and have the kind of personality that people gravitate to, and then are trusting and want to follow you and value your guidance and your leadership and trying to help them improve their health. That's the kind of personality that, quite frankly, it's very difficult or near impossible to teach. So in my mind, when it's possible, I will always hire based on the personality. And if the credential isn't exactly what I need, then I will make an investment in trying to help people secure the appropriate credential, or I'll support what that process. Doesn't always work out that way, but I've found that the best people, I've been at Cleveland Clinic Akron General for 25 years, and was having a conversation the other day, and with close to, I think, 400 caregivers in our wellness services division. I don't know exactly what it is. I'm going to find out, but there's an extremely high percentage of folks that have been here for more than 10 years, and an extremely high percentage of folks that started with us 25 years ago and grew through the development of this organization. So that's really gratifying. Again, I believe that hiring the personality is a higher priority than the credential. If you can get both, great. If you can't get the credential, many cases there's ways that you can help facilitate the acquisition of that credential for that person. So finding the right person is important. Ask when you're going through a recruiting process, at least for those of you that are in healthcare, you may be in a center that's affiliated with a healthcare organization, but if you actually work for a healthcare organization with your center, for me, I watch so many people when it comes to hiring and making those kind of decisions. They just say, hey, we have an HR department within our health system. All I have to do is fill out the rec and I send it to them, and then I sit here and move on. And I just wait for them to send me candidates. And for me, that just doesn't work, and it's not okay. I mean, because no one cares about your business more than you. And I'm not saying that HR folks aren't responsive, but if there's a position that's taking a little bit longer to get candidates for, it's going to go through the process just like every other department at the health system. So we have to work with HR, and I would never suggest that you don't work with HR or follow the appropriate protocol that's been established within your organization. But don't just leave it up to someone else. I mean, the best people I've found, I have found in concert with HR. While HR was going through the normal procedure, I'm out communicating and beating the bushes around my personal network to find out who might be available, and who is the best person out there for this particular position that you might know within our market or even outside of our market. And so that's just because we have HR folks that are tasked with conducting this process. Don't rely on that completely or 100%. Use your network. Go out and try to find a great candidate. And if you do find one, introduce them to your HR folks and let your HR folks run them through the process. So that it's not just wash your hands of the process. You need to be, in order to have a great team, develop a great team, assemble a great team and organization, you need to have your hand in that process of identifying and hiring great talent. Next point, hiring versus creating superstars. And, you know, there's not a right answer, at least from my perspective. If I'm in a market where I can hire expertise, like, so as an example, exercise specialists, if I'm in a market that has lots of universities and there's lots of very qualified young people coming out of school looking for a job and they want to become part of our internship program and I can hire them, that's great. Sometimes I work with organizations that are in smaller or rural markets, and they aren't close to universities, and there isn't a lot of talent, and so sometimes I talk with folks and they just kind of shrug their shoulders. Well, we can't get those kind of people. Well, bottom line is, if you can't hire the folks at a competitive rate, and it's competitive within your market, the compensation model for that position, then the next thing that really is kind of a no-brainer is you're going to work hard to create a superstar or superstars. And so now you become a leader that becomes great at creating superstars. And that comes out of necessity. But either way, there's not a right answer. It really comes down to what's available within your market. How is the compensation? What's competitive compensation wise in your market? Will it work with your business model? But they're both good approaches. It's just usually market driven. Crisis hires, the next point. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. I think we've all been there. You open at 5:15 or 5:30 in the morning. Your opener all of a sudden is no longer with you. And if you don't hire someone quickly to get in that position, then you're going to have to get up at 5:15 and welcome people to your center. You get my point. So all I'll say is that virtually in my own experience, and then every one of my peers that I've talked to about on this topic, we've all made the crisis hire, and in virtually every case, I've never heard one of my peers or in my experience say that when they made the crisis hire, it ended up being a good decision for the organization. So I'll just end at that point. You usually, and the path that I follow is, I will take however much time I need to find the right candidate. And as inconvenient as that might be in the short term, in the long term, it speaks volumes for the kind of organization, the kind of culture that you have created and that you're attempting to create, and the organization that you're leading. And oftentimes in a crisis hire, if you don't have the right person, we also know the negative impact that can have on a culture and on the motivation of a team. So just keep that in mind. That's a point that we need to be thinking about. From a compensation perspective, the next point on this list, I just wanted to mention that in my opinion, it is very important that we pay competitive wages, market-specific competitive wages. What does that mean? That does not mean that we should be the highest paying organization, but nor does it mean we should be the lowest paying. So many of you who are in healthcare, your HR departments will do a wage range review. Say that really quickly 3 times. But the point of that is really, we need to be competitive. If we're not competitive, if we're paying over market or at the top of market, then it really puts the success of the business at risk. So it's important that we pay competitive wages. And then lastly, as it relates to the interview, the only thing I wanted to say about this is when I ultimately do interview, I have found, and my peers that are part of that top 10% group of performing centers have found that multiple interviews is effective because you learn more about the person through that process. Engaging other leaders in your organization to weigh in and have a chance to meet with that person is really important as well. And what my key objective in an interview is to understand why the person I'm speaking to is sitting on the other side of my desk or on the other side of the table. I want to understand what's motivating them, why they're there. Did they just lose a job and they're just looking for anything to get by? Have they been working to be in this business for years, and they're passionate about helping people and making a difference? What is the reason they're there? If I can align their reason with our culture and our mission, then they're probably a good fit and will do really well. So let's move on to the next slide. Staff training. I'm going to try to fly through some of this because I'm running out of time. So staff training, we all know, our medical fitness centers typically have a variety of compliance requirements. And, so that all new hires have to go through a mandatory health system training program. We get it. It has to be done. There's no way around it from a compliance perspective. But there's pros and cons to everything. This is a little bit challenging only because a lot of the information shared isn't aligned or meaningful to our business. But there also are some pearls that can be taken from these training programs as well, and that's important. Then, of course, your medical fitness training program. There should be a specific training program designed for each new hire, each staff member that relates specifically to your business. And you're going to talk about mission and vision and values and goals and expectations. And it's really about making sure that the people you hire, that term, they're either on the bus or they're not. This is you want to make it really clear who you are as an organization and what the expectations are for them to be on the bus. And I will say, most people that get hired into a job, they don't start that job with the idea that, hey, I don't want to be successful here. I don't care. They usually start, they want to be a part of the team, and they want to be a contributor. And usually when hires go poorly, or at least one of the common areas or things that you see when a hire doesn't go well, is that the expectations weren't aligned. In other words, the employee had certain expectations, and they ended up not being aligned with what their supervisor or others within the organization expected. So I always look at that first. If there is a challenge, what can I do as a leader to make sure that the expectations are clear, and then I can also help that person if there are some areas that they need help in to meet those expectations. So I see that as part of my responsibility, or my manager or leadership team's responsibility. Departmental training. So within the overall medical fitness center, there's subgroups such as aquatics or fitness or group X or recreation or membership sales, those kind of departments. So there should be specific training for the department that person is part of. Staff meetings should be absolutely. The cadence of those meetings is not as important as the understanding that there is a known date when these meetings, and a known cadence for those meetings, and that they occur and that they're a high priority. Communication as it relates to staff and the highest performing staffs, that is probably the biggest or most impactful trait that you'll see in high performing organizations is great communication, not only with members in the community, but with your own staff. The next is outcome specific training. So whatever outcome is important, you've decided that service has to be a high priority for your success as an organization. You want to develop training programs, but you want to align that with specific, defined, and measurable goals and outcomes in order to get in order for that to be effective. Next, online training, especially in today's day and age. I like this approach, and I like it because when you hire someone, I have found it's always been a little bit troubling to me within my own organization, that we might hire someone, but our scheduled orientation isn't for 2 or 3 weeks. So usually they can't start till they go through a health system orientation. But then the more specific, job-specific training programs are scheduled and they're a little ways away. So during that time that person is working, they're working without valuable information that they need to be stellar in their position. And so I have found that online training is a great way to at least get an introductory message to folks while they're waiting for that training program to actually take place. And then lastly, record compliance. Make sure that you have good record keeping around compliance and the expectations that you have of your staff in terms of credentials and mandatory training programs and so forth that they're required to complete. Otherwise, it gets lost in the shuffle. And now the worst thing that can happen is that you have a team of people that haven't gone through the same training, have different thoughts about how things should be done, which is all good, but have different thoughts, not so much about how things should be done, but what the goal is, where they're striving to go. If you've got people that have different goals, then we're going in lots of different directions. We're not focused, and that impacts performance of a business. Staff retention, the next slide. Again, I'm gonna go through this fairly quickly. Staff retention, communication and expectations has to be absolutely clear if we're going to recruit and retain staff. You get what you measure. So always, if there's something that's important to you as an organization, you develop a plan, use the expertise of the experts that you've hired to do this and that you've surrounded yourself with. Use those experts, let them use their expertise to develop a plan, set a goal, and then make sure that you set a measurable goal. And that measurable goal has to drive performance. So without that measure, usually the outcome it usually doesn't result in the outcome that you desire. Leadership, meaningful work, servant leader. Just in talking about leadership, I had someone tell me early in my career, they said, help others get what you want and you will get what you want. It was really an interesting, at that time in my career, it was a really interesting comment. And I would just say that there are people that ask me, if they ask, what would you say your job is in one sentence or two sentences? And I say, my job is nothing more than to do whatever I can to support the success of those that I work with. And I think if you approach your job and your leadership position with that in mind, you will develop loyalty and great teams that will perform beyond what you ever thought was possible. Succession and career advancement. It's important. People need to grow in their career. I work very, very hard to try to create that kind of opportunity for my team. But if I have great people and almost a handshake agreement, if I have someone who's outstanding and they've given me 3 to 5 years of outstanding performance and I can't help them with an advancement opportunity, I will use my professional network to try to help them to get to the next step in their career. Don't want them to. We want people to be with us forever, but that's if I can't provide that advancement opportunity and they're ready for it and they've done a stellar job within our organization, I will help them find that next step. The career ladder, we already talked about that. Be responsive and demonstrate how much you care. So as a leader, there's nothing more deflating than not being responsive. Someone brings something that's important. The fact that they brought something to your attention means that it was important to them. And then if time goes by, there's no communication, nothing happens, that really creates a culture which is not conducive to great performance or successful businesses. Be responsive. I have a CEO here that I mentioned something in a meeting that I'm not even looking for a response. And within the next 3 hours, I get an email back where he's gotten information that helps me. That really gets your attention. So be responsive, and that goes a long way to demonstrating how much you care. Recognition, recognize people for the great work they're doing. That goes without saying. Look for people that are really in this because they want this to be a career as opposed to a job. Always, when someone leaves the organization, this is a learning opportunity because they're willing to say things they might not have been willing to say when they were not planning on leaving and they were part of the team. Use this to learn all you can about your culture, how your business is perceived by the staff that are on the front line making it happen, and use that to improve and get better. And then compensation, be sure to compensate and be competitive in the way that you compensate folks. Evaluate performance. The first thing when evaluating performance is make sure that the job description is correct. It's not okay to have job descriptions that are on file and been there for 10 years and the job is totally changed. You should actually use the job description when evaluating someone, looking at each item on the job description and then scoring or evaluating that person based on what's in the job description. So make sure job descriptions are current. You're using that when evaluating performance. Annual performance evaluations are important. Really, I know sometimes we've got so much going on, it's hard to devote the time, but this is the most valuable time you'll spend all year to do what you can to talk with folks, to understand how they're doing, what's working for them, what's not working for them, what's working for you, what's not working for you, and to have that conversation and develop a performance improvement plan and to move forward. Quarterly caregiver check-in, ongoing communication with your employees to really understand who they are as people, how they're doing, and what they need to be successful. I ask that often, regularly and often. And a 360 evaluation where your employees have an opportunity to evaluate your performance as a leader. Sometimes we try to avoid that, but really there's some great information that comes out of that can make you an incredible, inspirational, and effective leader. This is just an example of a check-in conversation, that quarterly check-in that I use. It's what's going well with your goals, what could be going better, how can I support you? It's just a little checklist sheet that I use when I'm meeting with various staff, and I try to meet with as many staff as I possibly can to have this kind of conversation. I found it really contributes to creating a great team. I wanted to just touch on this because I keep mentioning team. And it's really important that as leaders, we become extremely effective at developing great teams that are goal focused and are not only able to walk in and run the operations of your business, but to drive continued performance improvement, to look to the future, identify what's important to the business's success, develop plans, and then implementation. That's where most organizations fall short, is on the implementation. So you have to have a great team. And I put this slide up because for those of you who know me, you know my other life is show ski, water skiing. We compete and do contract shows all over the Midwest and all over the country all summer long. And so this pyramid is the best example of teamwork. And so the example is, if you count the number of girls and the number of guys, this is a 20-person pyramid. Starting on the dock, each girl is paired up with a guy and she's sitting on the guy's shoulders. The boat pulls this group off the dock, and then we practice all winter in a gymnasium with these girls standing up and traversing to their position in the pyramid. And so everyone has a very specific role in this, and they're all very different skill sets. So my son is right next to me in this pyramid. My daughter is up on the third tier. So what happens in this pyramid is, the girl in the fourth tier at the top, she is vitally important to this pyramid, but she can't do anything else in that pyramid. You certainly don't want me. I'm pretty good at basing a pyramid and carrying that pyramid. I'm not really good at climbing. You would not want me on a second, third, or fourth tier, or any of the guys for that matter. So we all have our roles in this pyramid. So the way you create an effective team is just like any team you create. You first sit down and you understand each other's strengths and weaknesses, and the strengths and weaknesses you bring to the team. You then have to respect each other for those strengths and weaknesses they bring to the team. And then you always play to the strength. You put the right people in the right position. And that's the key. That is the key formula to teamwork. So I just want to take a minute to share that. Just a couple more slides here. I think we're about out of time. So I do want to, I have two more slides I need to touch on. So caregiver discipline. This is hopefully you don't get here, but it will happen inevitably, where there's a caregiver that's not performing. You've tried everything and it's still not working. It's really important you keep, often with my leadership team, someone is in this kind of situation. And my first question is, do you have up to date and ongoing documentation that verifies your concerns related to this employee and what you've done to try to, in terms of corrective action? Um, when you talk with a caregiver that you're having to discipline, keep to the facts. As an example, a fact would be in membership sales. We have a goal of hitting so many membership accounts this month, and this is the number of accounts that you hit. It's very objective, not subjective. So stick to the data, the statistics, the facts. Don't get pulled off the track of that conversation with, well, this happened or that happened or this guy. Stick to the facts. Keep your HR team informed throughout the process when expectations are not met. Sometimes you can do all you can as a leader, but sometimes there are times where you just have to separate and go separate ways. And I will tell you this, when it comes to that, when you've worked with someone and gone through all the right steps and you get to this point, I have not yet in my career talked to someone who ended up letting someone go. And I'm not advocating for letting people go. I advocate for doing everything in your power to get someone on the bus and to make them effective and so that they can contribute to your success. But in the event that you have to let someone go, when expectations aren't met, it's a very difficult thing that have to go through in that particular type of situation. So I have not met a single peer that had to go through this process and a month later said, I wish I didn't do that. So I'll just, if you've gone through the process, it gets to this point, most likely this is what needs to happen. Don't forget to develop and execute a communication plan. Don't just have people come into your organization or leave your organization without the organization knowing, not confidential information, but at least understand that you're aware and that there is a reason for what you're doing and where you're taking the organization as a result. Additional considerations, site visits, a great way to get continuing education. You can go to conferences, great way to, awesome. Regional events are great. And just putting people in a van and driving to another center. There isn't a time that I've done that with a group of people that we didn't take some good information away. You learn something from every one of our centers. Continuing education, support that as much as possible. And again, there's ways that can be done inexpensively. Identify the best and then go get them. In other words, when we're looking for a position, the question I always ask is, who is the best person in our market or in our industry? And people are afraid to go. Once I identify who they are, I will go and ask them, are they looking for a position? Would they be interested in joining us? Mentor, lead by example. Don't ask others to do things you're not willing to do. What is best for I often, with people that I work with, we get in this discussion about what's best for the business versus the caregiver. And ultimately, you want to be embracing practices that are best for the business and for the caregiver, optimally. But oftentimes, I find businesses that aren't performing well, where the business they've made decisions or adopted processes that are great for the caregiver, as example, flexible schedules or something, but actually are causing the business to fail. And so there's got to be a balance there. So keep that in mind. Identify risks and develop a plan as it relates to the business process, and flex staff based on volumes. This is something that we talk about often. Every department in a healthcare system, when their volumes are down, administration and leadership are looking at seeing an impact on the staffing levels. We need to do the same thing. If your volumes are down, it's the summer, your staffing costs shouldn't be the same. And if they are, that sends up red flags to someone in accounting who's monitoring purely by the metrics and the data. So with that, I really appreciate your time. I know I went over. I covered a lot of ground. I hope it was helpful. Certainly, my contact information is there. If anyone would like to talk further about anything that I brought up, feel free to give me a call. I thank you for your time and your interest in going through this presentation.